Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tom Keating.
Yes.
Our first interview of the day.
All right.
Tom is, among other things, the chaplain at the VFW.
VFW here in Needham, yes.
Yep. Okay, so my first question for you is, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Stratford, Connecticut, which is on the coast of Long Island Sound between New Haven and Bridgeport, Connecticut. Had a great childhood there, a lot of outdoor activities, a lot of swimming, of course, in the summer and spring. And I went to Regional Catholic High School, Notre Dame High School, which is now Sacred Heart University. But it was originally a huge high school for 2,000 students, and it became a college.
Which branch of the service were you in?
I joined the United States Army in 1968. This was just after leaving the seminary. I had been in the seminary for almost 6 years, and I must say my political views were not welcomed, and they asked me to leave. I had, as many others did, we were all young seminarians, embraced the new liberal movement of the church, and it went against the powers that be, so they asked a bunch of us to not continue. And as soon as I left, I was told I was eligible for the draft. And this was 1968, the height of the war. And I felt probably had a better chance if I enlisted than if I was just a draftee. In those days, you got drafted. It's not like today. So I enlisted in 1968, the U.S. Army. I was sent to Fort Dix, New Jersey, for basic combat training. After that, then I went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, for advanced infantry training to become a rifleman. And because I was a college graduate, they thought I would be a really good candidate for officer school. So they sent me down to Fort Benning, Georgia Infantry School. You get the picture? Yeah. And I'm thinking, boy, this is not a good choice, Tom. But anyway, while I was there, I had a sudden realization that I couldn't be a killer. And I applied for conscientious objector status with the Army. And it took them almost 6 months before they agreed because of obviously my seminary background.
Right.
But while I was there for 6 months, I was harassed and all sorts of systematic discouragement. But I got through that, and they gave me the conscientious objector status, which meant I could not be a combatant after all my military training, which they didn't like. And they said, we're going to send you to Army Combat Medic School. And I said, fine. I'd rather be trying to save lives than take them. And then they changed their mind about 2 days later and decided to send me right over to Vietnam. I forget what the nomenclature is, but unassigned. I arrived in Vietnam in September 1969, and the culture shock and the environmental shock was incredible. It was very hot, very smelly. At that time, it was still a heavily rural area where we were, and you knew where all the water buffalo were because of their droppings. I was very fortunate that I was assigned to a headquarters unit because, once again, I was a college graduate. And in the Army in those days, college graduates were always desired by headquarters units because we could type, we could talk, we could communicate. So I spent my year with the headquarters unit. And aside from the occasional rockets and mortars and the enemy attacks on the base, it was a quiet year for me. It wasn't a combat year.
So what were your duties at headquarters?
First duty was interesting. I was with the 47th Military History Detachment because my minor was history, and you'd like to think that was the case, but they just needed a typist. They were charged, the unit was charged with recording the unit histories of all the different combat units in Vietnam, and these officers would go out and do interviews with the commanding officers of whatever unit it was. They'd come back with the audio tapes, and we'd transcribe them onto typed histories. I did that for about 4 months, which was pretty cool. Then we got reassigned to the major headquarters, the U.S. Army Vietnam headquarters, which was kind of the big administrative headquarters of the military. And there I worked for well, I can't remember the name of it. It was a supply for petrol and fuel. And I wrote, actually, I wrote contracts with companies in America. I typed contracts, I didn't write them, for supplying fuel and oil and stuff like that to the soldiers in Vietnam. I did that for the remainder of my tour, and I left Vietnam in September 5th, 1970.
So your tour overall was 2 years?
My tour was
Overseas?
1 year and 3 days. I wasn't counting, though.
I wasn't counting, no.
And upon I returned to the United States, they discharged me. They said, well, you only have 45 days left, we'll get rid of it.
Okay.
So they discharged me from Oakland, California, and I flew back to Boston to see my girlfriend. I didn't fly home to Connecticut. And
We won't tell your mom.
no, yeah, well, they had a surprise party waiting for me, and I didn't know about it. But so in 1970, I became a civilian.
Okay. What'd you do after that? What was your
Well, a lot of
what was your
readjustment.
job?
A lot of readjusting, and at that time there was a major recession going on in the United States, and it was very hard to get a job. It was even harder to get a job because I had Vietnam veteran on my resume, and I had more than one hiring manager ask me how many people I killed, and what are you going to say to that? And these were not fancy jobs. These were like regular jobs, and why would you ask me that? Anyway, I took it off my resume, and I finally got a job with a retail operation headquarters in Brockton, working in their warehouse. They sold women's clothing, and I was one of the people who was responsible for literally counting the boxes that went out the door. College degree. Anyway, my girlfriend encouraged me to go to night school to get a teacher certificate, which I did.
Yeah.
And I did substitute teaching for a while. And then the opportunity came to go to Boston University for a master's degree in education, which I did. And I had the GI Bill to help me out. And I also had a graduate assistantship and a couple other grants because I was so smart. But I think it was because I was a veteran.
Yeah.
And after that, 1972, I was hired by the town of Burlington, Massachusetts, to be a library media specialist with a focus on the media, because they wanted to build up their ability to teach children at all levels about how media was affecting their thinking. And so I joined the high school staff, but I worked for the director of media, a librarian media, and we did a whole bunch of good, what I think was good, programs to help the students learn about at this time in the 70s, there was an awful lot of concern about kids watching too much TV. Now, today, it's too much screen time. But back then, it was too much TV, and I got to work with the Action for Children's Television in Newton, and did some work with them, and they did some work with our town. So I did that for 8 years until the citizens of Massachusetts voted in the Prop 2.5 law.
Yeah.
And I, among the thousands of other young teachers, had to leave.
Yeah.
So I was lucky. One of my former students, well, he was a student at the time, his father worked for Polaroid. And he heard about my plight, and he offered me some work. So I worked for Polaroid for a year and a half doing training. And it was the first time that my military experience came in handy, because I had to work with the warehouse staff. And the warehouse guys are kind of rough.
Yeah.
I mean, they're rough and tough dudes. And there I was in my shirt and tie, which was a big mistake. Going to teach them how to use this computer. And they didn't want any part of me or it. And I said, well, I learned how to use this when I was in Vietnam. And the crew chief said, "You're a Vietnam vet?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "So am I." I said, "Where did you go?" We do what the we do what the veterans do. Where'd you go? What'd you do? And we shared experience, and then the doors opened. and that was it. And we were able to do the job, and he worked really closely with me. So anyway, I got encouraged to stay in the corporate world, and eventually went to work for Wang Laboratories when it was hot, and then I worked for Digital Equipment Corporation when it was hot, and then Lotus Development when it was hot, and then EMC Corporation when it was hot. And each one of those were great while the time I was there, but when they got cold, I was shown the door each time. So, because I was in communications, and communications are not considered critical when you're losing money, I guess. But anyway, it was always a great experience. I retired in 2013 and began writing.
What do you write?
And I published my first book, my memoir of Vietnam, called Yesterday's Soldier, a memoir. Re-released it this past spring with some new material. And also released my second book, Elephants, Secrets, and Submarines, Stories and Essays, which is a collection of, obviously, stories and essays. I also released that in March this year. So that's been fun.
Great.
My work at the VFW has been as the chaplain for the last, gosh, it must be 15 years.
Oh, wow.
And what I do there is try to help our veteran members who have problems, get them directed to the right resources. If they're ill, I visit them, I help their families. If they pass, we take care of their funeral, try to take care of them at the funerals, things like that. And I'm kind of the morale officer too. We have our Poppy Drive coming up this weekend, and I kind of manage that. But so I've been enjoying giving back to veterans since I joined the VFW here.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, that's it?
That's it.
Thank you.
We're welcoming Hal Cohn. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Okay, we got the same routine question. Where'd you grow up?
Excuse me, I grew up in Malden, but then after the service and marriage, I ended up in Needham over 60 years ago.
Wow. Okay, so you're a long timer. Though people would tell me you're still a newcomer because you weren't born here. You didn't go to high school here.
No, I didn't go to high school here.
That makes you not a townie. Which branch of the service were you in?
I was in the Army. After high school, I went to Bentley's, which was a 2-year school. So 1 year afterwards, I got drafted. Went in the Army at 1953, and after basic training, the Korean War started in 1950 when I was graduating high school. It ended up in 1953 when I was in basic training. And after basic, I had 4 months of advanced infantry basic. And then I got assigned to Washington, D.C., to the National Honor Guard, the 3rd Infantry Regiment. Mm-hmm. And we had responsibility for guarding the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, all the military parades. Eisenhower was president at the time in '53. So my job was company clerk at the headquarters company. So we had responsibility for troop movement and welcoming in all the people coming back from Vietnam. We ended up with a tank platoon with the tanks, and a big problem was where to put them. Because one time there was a parade downtown Washington, and we had to send a few tanks down there. As soon as they left the base, they ripped open the highway, and we sent them back to the base. It was good service down in Washington. The main problem was I was a corporal at the time, and I think our pay was around maybe $110 a month. But we did get a lot of freebies. We could go to concerts, we could go to plays, as long as you were in uniform. And our uniform was different than the regular Army uniform. Naturally, we had the blue infantry banner. We also had a leather butt strap where they would shine their buttons with the leather. That's how they got it as a designation of the 3rd Infantry Division. And I was also playing baseball down there, which was a good gig because we were traveling, playing college teams and pro teams. And I was a pitcher, but I didn't pitch much because we had one major leaguer and another one who was coming to the majors. One was with the New York Giants, the other one going to sign with the Washington Senators, who hadn't moved by then.
Yeah.
So I only ended up pitching 2 or 3 games the whole summer. But it was an interesting. We had a bus that would travel with us. We would travel on the bus. But as company clerk, I had responsibility for where everybody was, what they were doing, who was on leave. We used to have notice of who was coming back from overseas or who was coming in. Like we had some pretty famous people. Right next door to us was the Army Band. The main soloist at that time was Eddie Fisher. I don't know if everybody here knows who Eddie Fisher was. And we also had a Congressional Medal of Honor winner, this fellow, John Hendricks. And I got so curious, why did he earn the Congressional Medal of Honor? And I went and looked up his 201 file, and I could see why. He was a big hero in Second World War.
Yeah.
And they had a picture of, I'm pretty sure it was Harry Truman giving him the medal. But I served my time and I got out without getting fired upon.
So how long were you in Washington?
I was there for, after basic, year and a half. Well, 2 years actually, total service. Yeah. I got out in '53, went back to school, got my degree, went to work for Chase Manhattan Bank. I ended up as VP there. And then after I moved to Needham, we had 3 kids, and I ended up with a master's degree at Babson. So, and then here I am.
So financial services.
Excuse me?
Financial services, pretty much.
Yeah. I ran a division that used to make big loans. You know, our minimum loan was in the millions. So.
Yeah.
It was an interesting job. I did a lot of traveling because we had accounts all over the country.
Did you say Bentley?
Yeah. I got out in '52.
My husband teaches at Bentley
Oh, is that right?
in the finance department. Yeah.
Well, I was there when Harry Bentley was there. He was a little guy, and I remember in perfect cursive writing, he wrote on the blackboard, "None of you will graduate unless I could read your handwriting." This is before cell phones, computers. It was all accounting, except for 1 hour a week of law and 1 hour of English. We had a lot of the Second World War veterans coming in who had the GI Bill, and they had a better GI Bill than we had from Korea. Yeah. They were getting everything paid for, plus so forth. Tuition at that time, I hope some young people now don't hear me, was $350 a year. So,
but it was probably a lot in those days.
Yeah. Well, our campus was a building on Boylston Street next to the Boston Tennis and Squash Club.
Well, the campus is very pretty now.
It's a beautiful area.
Campus, yeah.
Our campus was across from the train yards on Boylston Street, where Prudential is, I guess.
Yeah.
But no, Bentley was a good experience, although I didn't stay in accounting.
Yeah.
I learned after the first year I didn't like it. So.
Okay.
But.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good to talk to you.
I know.
Richard Aronson and I met many years ago. He probably doesn't remember. When I first started at the Historical Society, I think Henry Hicks introduced us. And we have pictures of him in our collection in his career as a gymnast and gymnastics coach with the Olympics. But today we'll talk about his service.
About the service. I got drafted in October 1951. I was 21. After paperwork and everything else, I ended up in the old World War II Alaska Air Command, which was a territory back then.
Yeah.
I was a medic. To get there, I took a ship from San Francisco, and 5 days on the ocean was kind of miserable because I slept 3 berths up. Everyone else was throwing up from being in the North Pacific Ocean, and I missed it from the throwing up on the way down. I ducked back. I didn't hit it. And I got to Anchorage, Alaska, Whittier, actually, on a train, a wood-burning train. It went from Anchorage to Fairbanks, which was the last stop on the train.
Which is not a short journey.
Right. It was all day and all night. And there was no room for the troops, so I slept in a cellar for 6 months in a building. No place for us to, be. And
This was with the Air Command, you said?
this is in the Alaska Air Command, which was part of World War II. And all the troops were housed in a cellar in a building because they had no beds. So we slept there for 6 months, and it was not so great.
Yeah.
And from there,
And what did you do while you were there?
I was in oral surgery as a medic. And it was 73 years ago, a long time ago.
Did you have medical training in college? Is that what you...
No, they sent me to dental school at Great Lakes, and I went from there.
Okay.
What else did I do?
So this wasn't your
On board
expected-
ship for 5 days, and it was so cold I had to leave our sleeping bunks, and I went upstairs on the deck where the hot air was coming out from the engines, and I sat there all night warming up while we were in the North Pacific Ocean, and it wasn't so much fun.
No, it was cold.
And we got to Fairbanks, Ladd Field. From there, I boarded planes to service the troops on different places. One was Nome, Alaska, which is out near Russia, and not so great. Not a wonderful place to be.
How long were you in Alaska?
About 2 years. And we had 2 air raid warnings from Chinese and Russian planes, and we ran across the deck, and I dropped a bottle of whiskey that I had because I was in a big hurry. And what a waste that was.
Yeah.
Any questions?
What did you do after the service?
I went back to school.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what did you end up doing? What did you study?
I was a teacher, and I ended up a professor at the University of Massachusetts Lowell.
Okay. What did you teach? What was your field?
Sports psychology.
Okay.
And coach gymnastics.
As I met, yeah.
Since you already told me.
I knew that. I knew that.
Anyway, that was in when I was in the Alaskan Air Command. That was about 73 years ago.
Yeah. You said 1951 through about 53?
I got out in, when did I get out? December of 1955.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were up there for a while.
Right.
Yeah.
It was a while, and I wouldn't do it over.
Did you enlist or were you drafted?
I drafted and then I enlisted. So I think I was drafted in October of 1951.
Yeah.
So, and I still have all my uniforms and I can still wear
You
them.
still fit into
I
them.
haven't, I haven't
Excellent.
gained a pound. So anyway, I went back to school on the GI Bill,
Yeah.
and I forgot. You know what, folks? Don't get old because you forget everything.
I'll try.
Thank you very much for.
Thank you very much.
We're fellow history majors, so she's 1 degree ahead of me.
There's always time to catch up.
Yep.
Okay. Full name, David
David Lee Syersdale.
Sayersdale. Okay. I'll make sure I had that right. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana, and went to a small college in Kentucky named Murray State University, Kentucky. My brother and I were the first members of the whole family thing that ever went to college. And he was a much better student and actually would have been a much better officer than I was because he was in the advanced corps of the ROTC. I didn't want to do any of that, but near graduation, being a history major, I wanted to be involved in a history situation. So I knew I was going to be drafted. That was automatic. And I said, I think I'd like to try this as an officer if I can make it, which I did get into officer candidate school. You do a 90 days of utterly hell, answering all kinds of dumb questions and not learning a whole lot about the military. But if you survive that, and 70-80% people do, you become an officer and a gentleman. And now you're making a little bit more money and you're treated much better.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a bad idea. I was married a little over a year before I went into the military, right out of college, and stationed in, first station was down in Florida, and then a year and a half later, a year later, I moved to California and joined an airborne early warning control organization, which is what you're seeing in the papers right now about air pilot or air controllers being in all kinds of trouble. Not their fault necessarily, but they're the ones we point at that these planes are flying 90 seconds without any control and all that. Yeah. So they give you 90 days training to how to do that in the school down in Florida, and now you are a controller, and you're controlling 1, 2, 4, 5 planes simultaneously 90 days later.
What year did you
That was
go down?
1963.
Okay.
I graduated college 63 and was stationed in Florida for a year, and then I had a chance to join an airborne early warning organization where you're training pilots in the sky. And the virtue of that is you get an extra, this is 1961, you get an extra $130 a month to do that, which was a big chunk of money, and the prestige of being a flying officer. I had no ideas of staying in the military, nor did I think the military would be too excited about giving me a 20-year type of position. So that was fine. And the first assignment was wonderful. I'm down in Panama City, Florida, and things are beautiful. And the second time I get a chance to move to California, where there's more money, and Sacramento, California is a kind of exciting place for a kid from Indiana.
Yeah.
So that was a good deal. They had airborne, they had in-service education. So I signed up for this and a master's degree program in history. All of my training was anti-military, not deliberately, but they don't really need people from that category. You had a engineer, in fact, a guy here. He's qualified to do the stuff he was doing.
Yeah.
So I lived in Sacramento And a month after getting there, well, I was in training as an airborne controller versus a land. And I got through that and became an airborne controller. And then for 2 years, I flew in California three or 4 days a week. And then I got posted to Vietnam, and I didn't argue about that because as a history major, frankly, I wanted to see the war. The war was not much of a war in 65, so I thought the chances of getting killed here are fairly small. And when you're in an airplane, you learn right away that it doesn't hurt to be killed because somebody hits your airplane and it falls out of the sky and you're dead. So it's not like, gee, I broke my arm.
Well, that's one way to think about
Yeah,
it.
and it was a good way to think because most of us, the junior officers, particularly those of us who were going to be in 4 years and be out of there, had to keep a mental set of how bad is it to lose, and well, you're going to have 2 or 3 bad seconds, and then you're not going to remember whatever happened. So that was okay, but I ended up flying 90 days of combat missions over a period of 2 years. At the same time, I had signed up for in-service education right away when I went in there. And the officers that controlled me in 1966 to 63 onward were relatively young guys, early 30s, majors, colonels, and they looked at us kid lieutenants as just kind of their young children. They treated us very well. So I didn't have officers giving me a hard time.
Yeah.
It was like, well, he's kind of like my son. And they set up my schedule that I could actually get into class 6 hours a week and also fly these missions. And also I taught in the local schools to make an extra $25 a day when I wasn't flying. So the military treated me very well. And in exactly 2 years, or a few days short of that, I had finished the master's degree in 2 years, and I got out of the military about 4 days later. So it treated me very well. And I was in a combat area, so I met all the people that were running the Air Force, Curtis LeMay and the whole gang of people, ate at the Officers' Club in Saigon, and I lived in Saigon the whole time. So, you'd see these guys at lunch, sitting down at tables with you, and treating you just like, and these super commander types would say, what's your name? David Cyrus. So, David, how are you? I have a nephew called So it was very unmilitary, which was great. And we really, as a history person, you'd been over there taking notes on all these people, General Nguyen Cao Ki was the head dog from that country at the time, and he was kind of a playboy that drove around in a 57 Chevrolet, tailpipes lowered, and a girlfriend sitting next to him. He didn't bring his wife along, but so it was a really kind of an interesting place to. And I didn't sit down and write about this. I should have because these things were really fun. So that essentially is my.
So what kinds of missions did you fly when you were flying?
Well, I was connected to the American Strike Force, and so the guys who would go out, I would go out in front of them, and across the line of the two countries, and point out where the targets were. Today we're hitting this and this and this, and they would go after these. Now, as they got in trouble, as often happened, they'd say, I got a heat-seeking missile hooked to my tail here coming at me. And the standard there was, okay, point the plane towards the sun.
Yeah.
Because the heat of this, hopefully, that missile comes at you, but then you turn to the right and it keeps this way. And so that was one way you could save planes from being hit, and that worked about half or more of the time. And then as guys were getting hit, I'd gear them over the Bay of Tonkin, and the game there was get them to fly into the Bay of Tonkin, bail out, and we had Navy boats out there to pick these guys up. And if they didn't make it, they crashed. And to my understanding, one guy who crashed in Vietnam actually survived the landing in and escaped the Vietnamese. One.
Yeah.
Several hundred did not,
Yeah.
or they were just killed when they hit. So the odds were good if you got the plane over the water and bailed off, because the Navy would pick you up in 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And that was our role, is to try to save these guys and point them in directions where they could somehow survive when their planes were hit. So that's essentially my war, and it was exciting. And I wanted to go to Vietnam, because at that I didn't think I would be seeing that part of the Vietnam, but I did want to experience this.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I wanted to get a job in corporate America, and this was just a good place to stop for 4 years and kind of experience what my college degree was turning me towards.
You were in for 4 years
Yeah, I was a
overall?
4-year guy.
Okay. What did you do afterward?
I taught for 2 years and was a very mediocre high school history teacher. I know this because I had to hear me talk, and that was not my skill level. And then after that, I went into sales, national companies, and that sort of thing. So my business career was not an exciting thing. I made a good living, but that was pretty much it.
When did you move to Needham?
Yeah, I've been in Needham for 44 years.
Okay.
And in a second marriage for 43 to 44 years right now, with 5 children, ages 60 down to 36 or so,
Okay.
and 8 grandchildren. And so all of that worked pretty well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. That was fun.